Welcome, readers of Outlook. We are here today to tell you about, the what is love, the stories that we've written, the attempts behind that, and everything, and a lot more. So, four of us, we are all a team with Outlook. We are going to be discussing about, our stories, and then take questions from you and understand what you would like to, understand about our stories. So, Ashutosh, I think let's start with you about what exactly is love. What was that that you went looking for, and what did you get, and what did you put in the magazine?
Yeah, actually, uh, in this story, I have focused on intercaste couples, the kind of violence and the kind of hate crimes they are subjected to. So, I have written about the intercaste couples, and most of the times the violence against them goes unreported. So, in many cases, young people get killed in the name of honor for exercising their right to choose. So there has been in the past few years, we have seen some very progressive judgments coming from the Supreme Court. So those judgments had some sobering effect, I would say, on the social pressure groups like khap panchayats. So, and but on the other hand, we have seen some dangerous deviations from the Supreme Court directions as far as the lower courts, even the high courts are concerned. So I have focused on these things, and uh, in 2010, the Central Law Commission had recommended a law that should provide some sort of protection to these vulnerable couples. So, as yet, we haven't seen any development, any headway on this front. But of late, last year, Rajasthan has come up with a law to give protection to these kinds of couples. So, that law is yet to be cleared by the president, and there is some criticism of that law as well. But other states haven't shown any initiative. So
So
my story
Ashutosh,
also, yeah.
Ashutosh, despite you've talked about these laws and these things, that dissuade, that should be dissuading Kap panchayats from being there. But tell us one thing: they continue to be there, no? And what is the life of these couples? What is the life?
Life in most of the cases, my interviews told me that life has become very disturbed because they face persecution in many forms, like they face a social boycott, and then they have to leave their home, their native places. They can't go back and reclaim their immovable property. That becomes an issue. Then false legal cases are slapped, especially on the male partner. And in certain cases, I have seen people get murdered. For example, I met Mamta Nair. She's from Jaipur. 3 years ago, her husband was killed. At that point in time, she was 4 or 6 months pregnant. So she is currently fighting case against her own maternal family. Last year, she had filed a petition in Supreme Court demanding that the bail should be rejected in case of her father, her brother, her mother. So these are the things. Uh, uh, so
That you've
life never,
discovered, yes.
yeah, life
Life
never remains the same. It gets disturbed on so many
disturbed.
fronts, in so many ways. Yeah.
And coming to Lakshmi, you have seen another aspect of love. You've gone around looking for something, and you also turned up with something else. What aspect did you get? What is this whole thing about this, decoupling that we are talking about?
See,
Is it a mod?
decoupling is it's just a new term. No, it has always been there. It is a perfect setup for not upsetting the social apple cart. Now, what makes decoupling a rather catchy concept is its ability to do away with marriage with calm and understanding and a manner that saves time, money, and the harsh litigations. You don't want to go through the huge paperwork, and technically it is a kind of understanding for dissolution and separation of assets If you have a common business, if you have children to bring up, especially in one of the case studies that have shown that they had a specially able child, and they did not want to do away with the marriage because the child, he was both of them were good parents, just that they didn't get along with each other. Now and decoupling can happen in many situations. Like if you're living in a house and the expenditures are high, you don't want to come out of the comfort level, both of them, you're having a common house. But then ultimately, what is the impact on the kids is what has to be looked at. Now, many psychologists has to say that this is like till a certain time, the child doesn't understand what decoupling is and how it can affect the child, then it is fine. But there are some kids who can understand, like staying in the same house, the parents are not together. They're just putting up an act. They're playing an act of happily married couples. What happens when you're tired of playing this act? Now, that time, divorce is a better answer. Now, decoupling can be done in a very peaceful manner also, where the kid is aware of the parents not going along, but then they don't fight with each other. They lead the two different lives. But when it comes to responsibility regarding children or other things, they are together.
So, do they have a cutoff or something like that? That we're going to be living together, we're going to be decoupled for these many years, or do they continue to, for years on end? Is that something that you've noticed? That
See, in many, I've spoken to one of the lawyers, called Mohit Bakshi, advocate. He's from Bombay. He had to say that we always had this concept of decoupling. It was always there. It is not in most Indian marriages. It is just that after 10 years of marriage, there is not much love left in it. It is just an understanding, and the kind of each other becomes a habit. It's not not out of love or out of anything, but then not all marriages end up in having a fight or something like that. But talking about how common it is in India, it is, if one looks at it purely from social perspective and how high India as a company rank on the hypocrisy index, I would say that the decoupling is an urban Indian family secret, which has been around for a very long time, but no one wants to just talk about it.
Talk about it, yeah. And Asad, what about your story? I mean, your story is something on love jihad, a term that that everybody, I think, a majority are familiar with. And while doing this story, what did you notice? What did you come up with? And what is the takeaway from the story?
Right. So my story is on love jihad, and this is something which is being used every day in political discourse and public discourse. So I wanted to understand, where did the term love jihad come from, and I mean, where did this imagination come from of people doing love jihad? So I mean, I tried to trace the history of this so-called imagined phenomena, and saw that in 1920s, this has been used. The term love jihad was not used then, but this phenomena, this imagination that Muslim men seduce women from different community to change the demography of a country or a state or a city. So this has been there since 1920s, and I actually found a case study where in 1924, a Muslim bureaucrat was accused of practicing something similar to what we call love jihad today. So at that point of time in 1924, a Muslim bureaucrat had married a Hindu woman, and certain Hindu organizations had criticized the marriage on the same pretext that they do now. They said that this is being done to change the demography of India and to actually increase the population of Muslims in India. So this goes back to 2000. This goes back to 1920s, but then it comes again. It flares up again in 2009 in India, where a church in Kerala talks about love jihad as a phenomena, and a church in Kerala say that Muslim men in the state are luring women from different community in order to convert them and then get them married again to change the demography of the state and this country. So in 2009, this word came up, and then we saw that a lot of French organizations use this political term called love jihad. In 2013, I mean, this actually manifested into violence in the backdrop of 2014 Muzaffarnagar election. In 2013, a lot of people got killed. A lot of people, there was violence in parts of Muzaffarnagar and Western UP, which generally has been a peaceful area. I mean, people there told me then, when I went there as a reporter, I got to know that this area largely has been largely has been away from such kind of violence. Invoked, and certain terminologies are being used, like
Use.
love jihad, to invoke people from a certain community to actually protect the so-called quote unquote honor of the people of the girls from that community, and actually resulted in some major electoral changes in Uttar Pradesh in 2014 Lok Sabha election. Now that the reason why I looked at the story again at this point of time is that we are again having elections in
Elections.
2022, and different states are going to elections, and how this term is being used again, and how the entire discourse around conversion and love jihad have come back to fore again as a polarizing tool to reap electoral dividends. So that's what the story
So,
is. I mean, I did talk.
so when you met these people and you this thing, what are their lives like? I asked this to Ashutosh also. What are their life like? Constantly running, constantly hiding. Is there any normalcy to their lives?
It's actually very difficult for them now. I mean, they have been facing the wrath of it every day in their own lives. Some people who have married people from a different religion, mostly Muslim men, they have cases registered against them in in different courts of Uttar Pradesh, where majorly it's being played out, and they have to appear before courts almost every month, and then the fact that many of them cannot afford to get into a legal battle, and the kind of social ostracization that takes place along with it. I mean, people start accusing you of doing something which is very I mean, which is unlawful and against the norms of society.
Anti-legal.
So yeah, all that becomes a part of their daily life, and then the women at the same time are being abused and said that you're falling in love with the people from the other community, and that's some sort of character assassination is there. So, but then I also met
It's
an
not
interesting case. I mean. I would like to mention that I also met an interesting case where a woman was a Muslim, and the boy she married was a Christian. Although love jihad, it's not a typical love jihad case, and that's what she told me. But then she told me, that again she faces a similar problem, and she's not being accepted by a community, she's not being accepted by a family back home. So the underlying thing here is that patriarchy is what. Brings this back time
drives
and again.
this.
The root cause of this is patriarchy.
Yeah, very interesting looking at these different stories. Now, I did the story on love and the courts. Now, basically,
Right.
I looked at,
Right.
love and the law, and I was looking at it, and then I realized that, the easiest thing is to love, is to fall in love, is the easiest thing, And then after that, once you do that, and if you're from, if you're interfaith, you're interreligion, or, something else, then what happens is, then the question arises, who will you marry? Will you marry? Can I, do I have the license to love? Stay in that love. That is one thing. And when I was doing the story, I realized that, it is like who we love, where we love, whom, where do we live with this love? All these things are governed. There's a society, there is extended families, there's everybody telling people that, that if it's not a man woman kind of a thing, if you're in an interfaith thing or interreligion thing, if you're in a gay relationship, or you're in an extramarital affair, there is absolutely no place for that, that kind of thing. Then what happens is, then then there is the law. Then you have somebody petitioning courts. Then you have somebody asking, for a right to love. So this is what it is. So when I was, I realized that, like I said, that it is so easy to love, but it is so difficult, when you want to, reach the final goal of that marriage. There is so much to go. And all the couples that I met, from different things. I met people in gay relationships. I met people in extramarital relationships, and I met people in live-in relationships. In all of this, there is an anonymity. They cannot come out into the open and say who they are, who they love, what is their love. They have to pretend. There is this constant, you have to pretend to be, something that you are really not. So that is the thing that I did about,